Every morning, thousands of people walk past homeless strangers without knowing their stories. They see someone sitting on a sidewalk, someone carrying everything they own in a backpack, someone who appears to have nothing left to lose. But sometimes, the person you walk past today could become someone you never imagined tomorrow. This is the fictional story of Daniel, a young man who went from sleeping on city streets to building a million-dollar business. And it all began with one question: what if my life doesn't have to end here? Daniel hadn't always been homeless. Just 2 years earlier, he had a job, an apartment, and what he thought was a normal life. Then everything collapsed. He lost his job, his savings disappeared, his relationship ended, and eventually, he couldn't afford his apartment. One cold evening, Daniel found himself sitting on a sidewalk with a backpack beside him. Inside were 2 shirts, a pair of worn-out shoes, an old phone, and a small notebook. That notebook became the most valuable thing he owned, because instead of using it to write down everything he had lost, Daniel began writing down everything he could still build. At the top, he wrote, "I have nothing, but I can still start." Daniel spent his days looking for work. He was rejected again and again. Some employers didn't want to hire someone without an address. Others simply didn't trust him. Every rejection hurt. But instead of spending his nights thinking about what went wrong, he started studying. Whenever he could find internet access, he watched free lessons about computers, marketing, sales, and business. He had no expensive university degree, no wealthy family, no investor, just curiosity and time. Slowly, he discovered something. Small businesses in his city struggled with something incredibly simple. They didn't know how to attract customers online. Daniel decided to learn how to help them. For weeks, Daniel approached local businesses. Most ignored him. Some laughed. One restaurant owner told him, "Come back when you have experience." Daniel walked away, disappointed, but he didn't quit. The next day, he approached another business. This time, the owner listened. Daniel offered to help improve their presence. Daniel offered to help improve the restaurant's online presence for free. He spent days creating posts, improving the business listing, and helping the owner understand how customers were finding them. A few weeks later, something happened. Customers started coming in. The owner was impressed. He handed Daniel his first payment. It wasn't much, but Daniel stared at that money for several seconds. It wasn't the amount that mattered, it was proof. Proof that a skill could create income. Daniel used almost none of the money to improve his lifestyle. Instead, he bought a better laptop. Then he learned more. He found another client, then another. He found another client, then another. Soon, he had 10. 10 became 20. And eventually, Daniel rented a tiny office. People who had once walked past him on the sidewalk were now calling him for business advice. But Daniel never forgot where he came from. He kept the old notebook. The first page still said, "I have nothing, but I can still start." 3 years into the business, everything seemed to be working. Then Daniel made a terrible decision. He invested almost all of his company's money into an expansion that failed. The business nearly collapsed. Employees had to be let go. Clients disappeared. Daniel was back where he started emotionally. One night, sitting alone in his office, he opened the old notebook. He turned to the first page, and underneath his original sentence, he wrote, "Starting over is still starting." That sentence changed his approach. He stopped trying to grow quickly. He focused on building something sustainable. He learned from his mistakes. He rebuilt, slowly, patiently. Years later, Daniel's company reached a valuation of over $1 million. There were no cameras, no champagne celebration, no crowd cheering. Just Daniel sitting quietly in his office, looking at the same notebook he had carried when he was homeless. He turned to the first page. Then he smiled. Because the number in his bank account wasn't what made him proud. It was everything that happened before it. The rejection, the cold nights, the failures, the uncertainty, and most importantly, the decision to keep moving when there was no guarantee that things would get better. Daniel's story is fictional, but the lesson is real. People don't always get to choose where they begin. Some start with advantages. Others start with almost nothing. But your starting point doesn't have to become your final destination. Sometimes the first step isn't making money. Sometimes it's learning a skill. Sometimes it's asking for help. Sometimes it's simply deciding that tomorrow will not look exactly like today. And sometimes the most important thing you can build isn't a business. It's the belief that your circumstances can change. If you're watching this while your life feels completely stuck, remember Daniel's notebook. I have nothing, but I can still start. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a beginning. One skill, one opportunity, one decision, one step, then another. Because the distance between where you are and where you want to be crossed one step at a time. And sometimes, the person everyone overlooks today becomes the person everyone asks, "How did you do it?" Your circumstances may describe where you are. They don't have to decide where you end up. Just start, one step at a time.